All right, the Bothell City Council is back from break, and we're going to start in with AB 17-200, which is a public hearing establishing a downtown utilities and frontage improvement reimbursement area. Councilmember Agnew, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. Well, I am officially opening the public hearing, and we're going to hand it off to the city attorney to give a staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Can everyone hear me? This is going to be a very brief presentation. This matter has come before council a number of times before, most recently on September 5th when there was a full public hearing. At that point, the measure failed by a vote of 3 to 1. Then on the subsequent council meeting on September 19th, council directed staff to bring this matter back before the council before the end of the year with the following 3 adjustments. First of all, there was to be a 35% reduction in the amount of the assessment.
Tom, can you hear okay? Can you hear Paul?
No, I can hear him.
Okay.
Councilmember Agnew, just so you know, we can hear you too. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you. Okay. So there was the first measure was a 35% reduction of the assessment. So of the assessed value that we had originally calculated, the measure before you tonight represents a 35% reduction from that original amount. The second request was to remove all unqualifying administrative costs, and that has also been done. And the third is to defer the third request was to defer the payment to the certificate of occupancy, and we deviated slightly from that. We brought back a measure a few weeks ago that allowed the deferment to, it was an item on consent, allowed the deferment to final inspection, so it would be consistent with other deferment programs that we have. And so with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and also Don Feen is here if you have any technical questions about the measure.
All right, is there any questions for, let's start with Councilmember Agnew. Do you have any questions for staff?
I do not at this time.
Okay. Is there any questions for staff? Seeing nobody, let's go ahead and do the public comment portion real quick here. Is there anybody that would like to provide public comment? Seeing none. Council deliberations, would anybody like to deliberate, or do we want to just go for a motion?
I can make the motion.
Go ahead.
I move that we approve an ordinance establishing an assessment reimbursement area and reimbursement connection charges for the downtown utilities and frontage improvements.
Second.
So it's moved by Councilmember Sandberg, seconded by Councilmember Freed. Was that the staff recommendation
Yes.
that you read? Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Agnew, because I can't see you. Do you have any discussion on the motion?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Councilmember Sandberg?
I'll speak to the motion. This has been a long process that I think has been good in the sense that we listened to the downtown property owners. We tried to modify, we did modify our original staff request. I think it's important that property owners pay for or contribute to the improvements that are being made in front of their properties. And so this is a mechanism to do that. Again, it's not something that they pay today. It's only something that they pay. It's not even what they pay at the sale of property. It's what is paid when development occurs. And this assessment expires after 15 years. So it's not meant to be onerous. We have, I think, addressed a lot of concerns specifically about dropping the assessment additional 35% from what was discussed at the last meeting. And so with that, I hope that my fellow council members will support this. Thank you.
Councilmember Freed?
Great, thank you. I think we walked away from the meeting that we originally had with this, and as it went down, I think maybe all of us, maybe except for one, maybe we're disappointed with the outcome, because I think this is now going to be a fair result for the city, fair result for developers and people in the community. Councilmember Sandberg and I got together and find common ground. Sometimes we've been on the opposite side of this thing, but I think it was a really healing meeting that we had, of the opportunity to apologize to her for issues in the past that we may have experienced between each other, but I thought it was a very positive thing, and I think it's a good lesson tonight. Hopefully this will pass forward. It's a great example of when you find common ground, things can move forward in the most positive manner for the city overall. So thank you, Tris.
Anybody else like to provide deliberation? Nope. Nope. Councilmember Agnew? Would you like to provide comment on the motion?
Not at this point in time, no.
Okay. See no further discussion, go ahead and place your vote. And the vote is, I think everybody knows what the vote is. Okay, go ahead.
Mayor, I'm going to ask that once we place your vote, that Councilmember Agnew state his voice vote
After.
after.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see here. Councilmember Agnew, what is your vote?
My vote is yes.
Could you repeat that? Was that a yes?
Yes, that will be yes.
Okay. So it passes 4-, boy, that's a complicated one. It passes, and then I'm in the negative, and Councilmember Spivey is absent and excused, and Councilmember McNeil is an abstention. So it passes. And Councilmember Agnew, I think that's the end of your phone call. Thanks for calling in from vacation.
No problem. Thank you very much, and adios.
All right. Goodbye. So that closes the public hearing. We're on to AB 17-201, public hearing to consider approval of the proposed ordinance amending the 2017-18 biennial budget. And I'm officially opening the public hearing, and we have a staff presentation by the Finance Director, Tammy Shackman.
Thank you. Okay, so can you hear me? Hello? Nope. Did you guys plan this? Okay, I just want to make sure.
Go ahead, give it a try now. Let's see if you fixed it.
Hello?
No? Do we need another break?
Want to bring this up there?
Sure. Hello? There we go. Okay, so at least once a year, staff comes back and with a budget amendment proposal for council to review. The first proposal is basically to move $8.2 million of, it's the funds that have been brought in from properties that have been sold in, is this really loud? Yeah. From non-restricted proceeds from property sales. Those monies are currently in the capital improvements fund and need to be moved into the, and need to be put into the general fund to show that they're not restricted. So when Moody's comes and looks at our credit rating, that they understand that those monies are available for non-capital spending. There's also a $50,000 proposed transfer from the solid waste administration fees for the general fund sustainability related projects, which you heard about tonight. And there's also $340,000 in expenditures for proposed and previously council approved staff changes. Besides the general fund, there is another transfer from the Park Cumulative Reserve Fund for $219,000. Those monies are being used or were used for 3 parks, and those are all associated with monies that were approved in the capital facilities plan. Earlier, I talked about the fact that there was $340,000 in new staffing spending that is being proposed, and so I'm going to go through each one of these staffing proposals. You can ask questions of me or from the department directors if you have further questions. We'd be happy to answer those at the beginning or at the end or as we go along, whatever works for you. Basically, with the new city manager came in January, at the executive level, staffing needs were really looked at. There were a lot of changes when the interim city manager was here. And so those changes were being weighed along with, we've been doing things the same way for a long time. So what can we do differently? How can we work smarter and more efficient? So departments have been encouraged to explore opportunities to implement efficiencies that better serve the organization and help us achieve the council's goals. The following proposals that I'm going to talk to you about were all made with this in mind. The previously approved by council positions were the Parks Planning and Grant Manager and the Information Services Director, which was moved from a manager to a director. That amounts to $285,000. So when I talked about the $340,000 in additional expenditures in this budget proposal, this is significantly the lion's share of what those costs are, okay? As you remember, when the interim city manager asked council to approve a interim customer service counter manager, we put that position in place. And what we found was we had utility billing at the same counter instead of being under Public Works Administration, Public Works Management. It just made more sense to move the utility staff over to the Bothell Ops Center to work with the staff who are out in the field and running the operations, and for the billing department to be right there with them and to have the same managers instead of having finance manage part of the process and Public Works manage the other. So instead, finance got the customer service counter and payroll. So basically there is some cost associated with this move because at one time the utilities were paying a portion of the manager's wages. So when we split it up, there's $118,000 cost to the general fund, and we do have salary savings in finance to cover us for 2018. In addition, as I said before, the sustainability assistant, part-time, limited term, is being funded with $50,000 of solid waste fees, and that has to do with the sustainability program that the city has. So this position would be paid for with those solid waste fees. Okay, we have two reorgs that I'm going to talk about. The first is a parks reorg. It's a small reorganization, basically reclassifies two positions, taking the parks maintenance supervisor to an operations manager, and adding parks construction projects to his duties. It also takes the senior maintenance worker position and lowers that to a maintenance worker position. So there is no cost associated with this reorganization, or no additional cost, and there's no additional staff. The idea is, again, to work more efficiently and to have the proper amount of supervision over staff. So the right structure, management structure, to deliver the best level of service to our citizens. Okay, in CD we have two proposals. One is to add a development review engineer. This is being funded by a small decrease in consultant expenditures and an additional revenue that we think will come in-house, because what we won't be doing is sending it out to consultants to do the work and then receive the revenue. So we think we can do a better job in-house. The senior plans examiner is 100% funded by development, and basically is the same process as the development review engineer. This proposal also is asking the council to approve the hiring of 3 additional police officers, 1 public safety telecommunicator, and 3 firefighter positions. The idea behind this hiring is that if we have an over-hire strategy for public safety positions, public safety has to have minimum staffing levels. In order to meet those, if somebody is sick, retiring, ill, L&I issue, every single day we're backfilling them with overtime, so time and a half. The idea with the over-hire strategy is that we believe that the supervisors, that the chiefs, through actually being proactive and looking at what's happening and having 3 positions that they can fill at any time, and actually have excess of minimum staffing, will be able to address those issues without calling people in and paying time and a half. I think both the police chief and fire chief have showed that they can reduce overtime to compensate for these 3 positions and probably more. So we're proposing to take this forward and allow these chiefs to do their job and basically to manage their hiring, to foresee retirements and that type of thing. Instead of, what happens is you have, and they're here to speak too, but what you have is somebody lets you know that they're going to retire. Now you have to send somebody to the academy, which is going to take, months, and you're going to be backfilling the entire time that they're being educated before they can come back. And then they have to go through the FTO program in police, which is another 4 months, at least 4 months, I believe. So the whole time you're backfilling. Now, if you have somebody who's sick, ill, on L&I, you're backfilling even more. So literally they were able to take 2016 numbers and show that had they done this prior, it wouldn't have cost as much. So we have really high hopes that this is going to help us we're still going to spend the money, but we're going to provide a better service to our community. We're going to have more firefighters on duty. We're going to have more police officers on duty. Okay, so that is the whole idea behind this. When you see that this is going to cost $800,000 in excess, you're also going to save those monies in overtime, in tired officers, in tired firefighters, because they're being, if somebody's sick, they're on LNA, we're calling in everybody else to come cover those shifts for months on end. And we believe if the chiefs have the tools to do it, that they will be able to do that smarter, safer, and just provide a better level of service for our community. In addition, there was a CRR, Community Risk Reduction Firefighter position, that was eliminated in the 17-18 budget. We actually kept the revenues in because this firefighter goes out and does very vital inspections at businesses in our community. The interim city manager moved the position back over to operations. What we found was that it created a bottleneck in the development review process, and also we weren't getting those really important inspections done. So we were losing revenues there. So anyway, we are going to propose doing the same thing as what we did with the overhire process. Go ahead and put this CRR firefighter back into CRR and reduce overtime by an equal amount. Okay. Through an executive level evaluation of the city's needs, it was determined that, when I say executive level, I'm talking about the city manager, when she came to the city and then saw how we were operating. And I can tell you, after working in HR for, quite a few months now, I completely agree. we really need to have a human resource safety manager. It's just essential to reducing risk and future premium interest or insurance premium increases. The position is so vital that we actually looked throughout the city for ways to fund this position, and a executive office management assistant was eliminated, and the deputy city manager position was recreated as an assistant city manager in order to fund that position. The utility billing program specialist lead I spoke about earlier. This is the position that was at the customer service counter and then moved over to the utility billing at the Public Works Ops Center. Now, the Public Works street and utility reorganization, I'll go through very quickly. There's no staff add. There is no increase in cost, and I'll explain how that happens. Basically, the Public Works superintendent is proposed to be reclassified to a deputy director of operations to better reflect the level of responsibility and provide the management structure that we believe is needed due to increased complexity of the entire operations division. Keeping in mind that we have the streets and sidewalks, we've had the downtown revitalization, we have had annexations, and all those have increased workload of staff. What the Public Works Department is making happen here basically is to take their street maintenance supervisors, make them into managers, add 2 maintenance specialists and 1 senior maintenance worker, and then remove 3 maintenance workers. So they're restructuring their whole organization in order to better provide service and to better manage the staff that are there. So the way that they're taking some of the increases, basically like the street maintenance supervisor to a manager. The way that they're paying for this is they used to have summer interns or summer workers that would come and work in the Public Works Department, in water and sewer, street maintenance, storm. What they found was they couldn't hire people. They had a really hard time hiring people because the unemployment rate is so low. And then they would train people and then they would leave and they'd have a new crew the next summer. And so what they're finding is that they can just use those monies to basically take a supervisor to a manager where they can do the evaluations of staff and do other things as in a manager position, and maintain the maintenance workers who then can do the work, and they're here all year. So, and I'll let Aaron speak to that a little bit better than I am here. So anyway, that is the Public Works reorganization. Each one of the divisions, street maintenance, water and sewer supervisor, and the storm area, all are being proposed to be reorganized throughout the Public Works Department. Now, the ASME and non-rep classification and compensation study, when council adopted this study, the HR director noted that there were some appeals pending. The ASME bargaining agreement subsequently prescribed the process to bring those appeals to resolution. These changes have taken place and are incorporated in the authorized position listing, and I'm just conveying that for transparency reasons because you have the class and comp appeals. So if a title changed, a classification changed, it just says class and comp study next to it, so. And then lastly, for the 28 budget amendment, we'll be bringing back retroactive pay impacts from collective bargaining, the Wayne Golf Course acquisition, and City Hall facility and utility operational costs. None of these are completely known at this time because we have a biennial budget. We can actually look and try to absorb as much of these costs as we can into the 2018 year, the second year of the biennium. So we're not coming back and asking council to increase an appropriation until it's actually needed. So we will bring those back in 2018 and keep you abreast of where we're at in those areas. Okay, and that completes my presentation, and we can answer questions for you.
Do we have questions now, or should we see if there's anybody in the public that wants to provide comment? Would anybody in the public like to provide comment? I don't have anybody on the sign-up sheet. Seeing none. Okay, how about Councilmember Freed?
Great. Tammy was here. There she is. Tammy, on page 2, we have the Information Services Director. What's a 2-sentence job description?
The Information,
Services Director.
the IS director,
Yes.
Director Sherman. The $40,000 was an increase from the
Oh, I thought that was-
manager moving to a director
Okay.
position.
Thank you. I was wondering who was getting paid $40,000 for that position. Good. Okay, cool. Thank you. Do we have anybody in, besides our police officers, who, when people come to council or they're maybe on the streets, apparently we have 250 homeless people through North Shore School District and other places. Do we have somebody that helps them besides maybe police officers find resources? Who would that be?
The Parks Department helps, the Public Works Department, anyone who is in the parks, streets. We have a lot of different information that gets transferred to the different departments so that when they come up, there's also training in that on how to deal with mental illness or homelessness or people looking for services. So there's communication with the police chief, fire chief, throughout the city, making sure that people are prepared for those type of things.
Okay, we had a gentleman, homeless gentleman that came and spoke a couple meetings ago, and I know I jumped up, city manager jumped up and met with him, and then Chief Simon, went to make sure that he was taken care of. But sometimes I wonder if some homeless might be looking for resources, but they're afraid to come to the police to ask about it, or whatever fears they may have. I just don't know if we could do a better job in the city to make sure there's a specific person allocated toward that, because we have a lot of resources. We have Community Care Day, where I think at least 50 different organizations come together that point people to resources that are maybe not homeless, but they're in a financially, economically difficult time. So something maybe to consider in the new year.
Yes, and that actually is one of the council's goals, and we have been making some strides in those areas. And so when every quarter, the city manager brings back a list of the council's goals along with the different things that we have done to try to achieve those, and you'll see some pretty big strides in those areas.
Great, cool. Thanks so much, Tammy.
Those are on our progress reports too, right? That we post on the city council website.
Correct.
Yep. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you for that lengthy presentation,
I'm
but
sorry,
it did clarify some of my other questions. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about the Human Resources Safety Manager, what the job entails, and
The safety manager actually would work with FMLA. It would work with our insurance policies, making sure we're doing what we need to be doing. It would deal with the safety throughout the city and the organization, working with the different staff on that. There is just a lot of work that needs to be coordinated, making sure that training happens, making sure our policies are in place. These are big areas where cities can get behind, and it can increase our insurance premiums over time if mistakes get made. So it's just, there's inherent risk in all that we do to provide services, and we need to make sure that everybody gets the training that they need and that it's documented, and that we follow our own policies and procedures.
So who does that job now?
It is handed out to multiple different people throughout the HR department, and also the legal department has a paralegal who works on some of this. What we need is to have one person who makes sure that everything gets done, all the T's get crossed and the I's get dotted and that type of thing. We need to have a system where we track the trainings, that we make sure that we keep up. Just now, there's legislation that has to do with how we track sick leave for even temporary employees or volunteers, and as the legislation change, we have to get up to speed on those things. We have to implement them quickly. We need to make sure that we're covered and doing what we're supposed to be doing. And right now, I think we do a good job, but not good enough. I think we need to have one person who is responsible and really watching this, watching legislation, making sure that we're implementing things when it comes about, and that it is, we're proactive. We're not just reacting to everything, that we're thinking things through and getting the right people at the table. And that's very hard to do when it's spread out amongst so many different people. We have a lot of people who work very, very hard, but every important area like this needs somebody to see it through, somebody to manage it and make sure that things go well.
So is this position expected to pay for itself? I can't remember from the presentation.
Oh, actually, there were two positions that were changed. There was a management, executive, management administrative position that went away. That was $115,000. This is expected to be $130,000 for the safety manager. And also the deputy city manager position went down to an assistant city manager position. So once that gets filled, we'll know exactly how much the change is going to be. But we anticipate that between those two, it will cover the cost of the position. But I will say, when you look at your policies, you have your SOPs out of place or behind, and something happens, what that would do to our insurance premium, and maybe it wouldn't be tagged directly to, oh, you don't have this position, but that's the reason why, because we're not making sure that the things that we need to do get done, and we get all of our trainings, and people have, we just need to make sure everybody has the trainings they're supposed to have, get that track documented. And with FMLA, we need to make sure that we are providing our employees with the services that they need, and that they are, that we're obligated to make sure happen.
So, and I imagine it'll free up, which is hard to quantify, but free up other employees' time as well.
Significantly. When you look at the increase in employment in this city, or the annexations, or different things, it's the internal service departments that don't get new employees. So it's the finance, the HR, the IT. This year we've made some big strides with IT, but HR, we do not have enough staff. I've been spending a lot of time with them lately, and for recruitments and that type of thing. This safety manager position is, it will definitely provide the women who work in that office. It's all women at this point. They are trying to do all the safety manager duties as well, and it's just too much. It really is.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any further questions? Councilmember Sandberg?
Thank you for presentation. So at the highest level, it looks like that for 2018, this amendment proposes a $662,000 increase in expenditures. And those are all salary. So it's all personnel expenses, $662,000 for 2018. Is that correct?
The 662,000, that doesn't take into consideration the revenues that would be gained. So while the number is correct, there would be revenues that would actually net out to a $340,000 figure.
And so, yeah, so it says 321,500 is the expected increase in revenue appropriation. And so where is that revenue appropriation coming from?
A lot of it is coming from community development, permitting fees, fire inspection fees.
Is any of it coming from the operating transfer from the capital improvements fund?
No, not at all. Those monies will be held in the general fund for future lease payments for this building.
And so if we don't realize that anticipated 321,000 increase in revenue appropriation from increased permit fees, et cetera, then does that mean we will not hire those positions?
It means that we probably would hire those positions now with the expectation that those revenues would come in. We feel strongly that they will. If they didn't, that's something that we check quarterly. We come back to the council, let you know where we're at with our revenues and expenses. And so it might be another position that the council and the city manager choose not to fill in the future. I couldn't tell you that it would be one of these. When development is happening in an organization, we have to have the people there to actually run the process, so.
But it looked like almost all of the positions that are proposed, new proposed, are all full-time. There was only one limited term. So if you hire people, then you can't easily let them go if the revenues don't come in as projected.
All of our hires now in the hire letter actually says subject to budget.
Okay.
So everyone is on notice that if revenues don't come in, a recession hits, something like that, that changes are going to have to be made. Doesn't mean it's that position, but it might be an area that we're not going to provide, you know, whatever service in the future, and those positions would go away. So those are tough decisions that have to be made depending on the revenues, and we come back quarterly to let you know what those are.
And then, so at the table at the end of all of the payroll classifications, it looked like there was an increase of about 10 FTEs, so roughly 10 new positions. Is that right?
You know what? I'm going to look behind me. Is it 10? Basically, there's 4 in public safety, and the safety manager. Yeah, there's 4 in public safety. So that's about the right number.
So there's three new in police. I thought there were 3 new in fire.
3 new in police, 3 in fire. There's also a 911 operator in police.
So is that inclusive of, no, there's 3 new officers in police. And I thought there was 3 new firefighters in police.
There's 3 firefighters in fire, there's 3 police officers in police, and there's 1 communication officer or communication specialist in police.
And there's a community risk reduction firefighter as well, which is in addition to the 3?
That position actually was already on the listing, it just wasn't funded.
And then is the parks, the new parks grant manager position, is that part of the 10 or already hired and not included in the 10?
That position was hired months ago, approved by the council and hired months ago.
And but is that included
right-
in the 10 total from the payroll table?
We come back with the budget amendment and with the budget process and update the position listing. by what's been approved by council up to that point.
And then it looks like there was a new engineer in community development, and then the human resources safety manager is also new. Okay. When we approved the parks planning and grant manager position, it was the idea that that would be completely funded through the grants that they were able to acquire through their position. Are we on track for that? Does that still look feasible? Are they going to be self-funding in terms of the grant money that they're bringing in?
I think already just with the way that the position has been very successful.
Well, and the position's currently vacant because the individual that was in that classification is currently serving as the interim Parks and Recreation Director.
Okay, but the intent is still to evaluate and assess that position to ensure that it is offsetting that's cost by bringing grant dollars into the city.
Right, and as the director started her presentation, my philosophy has been as positions become available, we assess them. And so if that position remains available, it'll be a discussion that I have with the director to determine whether that's the right classification. What do we need? What does the department need? What resources are there? What strengths are already there? And what other things do we need for the department? So every time a position comes up, we don't just automatically fill it. We look at it, we analyze it, and we decide what's best for the city and to deliver the services.
Okay. And then for the police and fire hires, I understand the logic to reduce overtime because we don't want to be staffed at the minimum level because there are overtime costs. So on your slide, it said this strategy will be monitored for each payroll period. And so I guess my question is there a target goal to ensure that this strategy is working? Are we looking at a goal of 0 overtime in these departments? And what happens if this strategy doesn't reduce overtime significantly? And what's our definition of significantly? Because we're significantly increasing staffing. And I just want to ensure that that is going to address the concern that is reflected in this amendment.
So you're never going to have 0 overtime. That's just not going to be possible. What I will do is work with each of the chiefs and look at their overtime reports and see how we're doing. And that's the whole idea. It takes 18 months at this point to hire a police officer unless we have the opportunity to hire a lateral. So these positions are not going to fill quickly. And so there's still opportunity to look at the overtime, to look at the workload, and just continue to evaluate. Again, this is something, we're trying something different. What we've tried in the past isn't working. Our overtime continues to increase. So this is an opportunity to try a different strategy and see how it goes. So I'll be working with the chiefs to monitor that.
And if we do get to this full staffing model where we've been able to successfully hire and train and bring 3 new officers and firefighters in the department, it'll be interesting to see, and I hope that there are hard metrics to address the overtime because this is a method to do that, and but we want to make sure that we're assessing that strategy and not just assuming that it works. And I know that you will be looking at that.
Well, and 20 or 25% of both workforces are eligible for retirement, and so we could very well have people leave. We could have injuries. We could have disabilities. We could have retirements, and so overtime could continue to go up, and we have still inadequate people to be able to cover. This is just a start to see if this is a strategy that can work. So I can't guarantee anything, because staffing is unknown. You never know what happens tomorrow. And so we'll do the very best we can. The idea is we're trying something different. There's accountability for the chiefs with me, and we'll see how we do, and we'll report back to the council.
Okay. And then when we eliminated the position of the community risk reduction firefighter in the last, at the beginning of this budget, there was some thought that maybe that work could be accomplished to some degree by existing staff. Is there an idea that if we are able to get to this new normal within the position where we're overhired, that we could have firefighters do inspections that a community risk reduction firefighter would do if there is excess time with additional people on staff?
The fire chief may want to respond to that.
Yeah, I could try to weigh in. I can't see over there, but we do two kinds of inspections generally. We have just a general annual inspection for businesses. Those don't require permits. Anything like a general strip mall that you don't have any kind of permitted access, the firefighters do those inspections on a regular basis. What we use the CRR folks for generally is for permitted occupancies if they have gas or restaurants and they have hood and duct systems, things like that. They are certified to do that, and so we actually get when you're talking about WSRB ratings, certifications are looked at, and we get graded. We get extra points for having those things done. So essentially, there's two kinds of inspections. So we're already kind of doing that. With this position not filled, and just in the last, I think, 4 months, we've had about $33,000 less than the year before, just in those permitted spaces that weren't inspected. So the position, well, it may not completely pay for itself. There's certainly a large revenue gain by having this position filled. And besides that, there's a lot of other things that aren't getting done because of this position being vacated. We're not getting pre-fire plans done as we'd like to, or have to shuffle people around. So we're getting work done, but it's very hard. We'd be much more efficient, and we'd bring in some more revenue had we had this person in place.
Okay, thanks. For the Human Resources Safety Manager, why does this have to be a manager level position? Can this be done by somebody like at a lower level specialist position? And will this Human Resources Safety Manager have any direct reports?
So it's critically important that this individual have a level of responsibility because they're overseeing the safety of 340 employees within the organization. Director Shackman gave you a sense with the Deputy Mayor's question of the importance of this position. We have an obligation to make sure the 340 employees are safe. State law, federal law, our own policies and procedures to be able to comply with all of that, make sure that with OSHA regulations, with all the policies and procedures, with all the things that the state requires for employee safety, the individual that is enforcing these things has to be at a level that they have the authority and the respect within the organization that they can implement and be able to make the changes and give the directives that the organization can then follow. So if you have it at a level that basically it's multiple people needs to go up a chain for someone to make a safety decision, you're losing the impact of that individual to be able to truly be responsible for safety within the organization. And so when we looked at the position, and you look at what's really necessary for one person within the organization of this size, especially with having police and fire and a full public works department, that individual needs to be at a level where they can give directives, where they can make changes that are necessary and have the authority to do so. So for me, yes, I believe it needs to be a manager position.
And will they have any direct reports?
They will not. Currently, we have a safety committee, and that was one of the questions about alleviating staff time. We have a very dedicated group of individuals who serve as our safety committee. They do site visits. They've really done a fantastic job over the last years. But we are large enough, and the responsibilities are so great. We have an obligation, and so I appreciate everything that the safety committee's done, but we have a responsibility to ensure that our employees are safe, and this position will do that. And it will protect and our risk and liability, I believe it will be reduced by having this position.
And then for Public Works, it looks like there's no staff being added, but it looked like of all the changes that were being proposed, they were all upwards reclassifications. Is that the case?
That is correct, and I'll have the Public Works Director respond to that question.
Thank you, Tammy, and thank you, Council. The proposed Public Works reorganization does a few things, and you are correct that the positions that we're proposing are all reclassifications to a higher level than currently exist. On the supervisory side, between the supervisors and the superintendent, the proposed reclassifications actually recognize the level of work that those individuals currently do. The work that our operations team has been doing over the years has become increasingly complex between the regulatory environment and annexations and other initiatives. The work that they are doing day to day is at a higher level than our supervisors were intended to do. The reorganization also proposes changes within our AFSCME group. We have, for example, the Streets and Sidewalks Levy. We have some operating programs within the street operations team that the proposed reorganization allows us to better structure work teams to go out instead of having, right now we have 7 maintenance workers in the street section. Maintenance worker is our entry level, maintenance worker level. And the proposal is to change that from 7 to 4 maintenance workers and then add some maintenance specialists. So they can essentially be the crew leads for example, our right-of-way program. We can have a maintenance specialist overseeing the folks who are out there in the right-of-way maintaining that, and also a maintenance specialist overseeing the crews that will do the sidewalk repair and replacement program, for example. Because we don't have lead workers that can super or watch over those teams in the field. So my recommendation is to change the structure so that we're not so bottom heavy. We've done a lot of hiring at the entry level. And as the finance director mentioned also, we've added a lot of seasonal worker time over the years. And we're discovering that not only can we not hire that many seasonal workers, it's causing challenges for us with span of control. If you have a bunch of people who are out there in the field and who are inexperienced at what they're doing and don't have enough oversight, it's not only can we not accomplish the goals we have, but it can be a safety issue. So those are the proposals we're making.
So if I heard you correctly, you said that you were making a lot of hires at the lower entry-level positions. And I'm just curious about what the organizational structure of Public Works is with this when we're elevating a lot of positions, and are we, creating a lot of lead and supervisory positions with relatively, with the ratio of leads to lower level workers. Are we impacting that?
Nick's going to bring up the organizational chart, the current and the proposed. We are not proposing to add any lead workers or any supervisors. So to be clear, that the supervisory structure that we currently have as far as non-represented management, that headcount will stay the same. Our lead workers, we're proposing to keep them the same as well, that we will just have one maintenance lead worker in each one of the sections. But we are proposing to add at this maintenance specialist level. So it's below lead, but it's a more sophisticated level, more of a journey level worker than senior maintenance or maintenance workers.
Can you just explain what you've got highlighted there in the handwriting?
So what I have highlighted in the handwriting there just shows who or how many FTEs are reporting to each manager. So for example, in storm operations, we have 9 FTEs and 3 maintenance worker aides, which are those seasonal employees. For the water and sewer operations, we have 9 FTEs and 2 maintenance worker aides. And then for the street operations, we have 11 FTEs and 3 maintenance worker aides. So that was just my handwritten notes, and I didn't know we were going to be putting it up here tonight, so.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question. So when we adopted our 2017-2018 budget a while ago, our budget balance anticipated at the end of 2018, at the end of the biennium, was 0. Are we still on track to be, at basically zero fund balance at the end of 18, as opposed to having any kind of surplus. Obviously, we couldn't plan to have a deficit.
Okay, so revenues corresponding to the expenditures. So basically no impact on fund balance. So our fiscal position would be the same at the end of 2018 as it was at the beginning of 2018.
And it's the same as when we adopted the original 2017-2018 biennial budget.
I would say that when we come back and we talk about the retro pays and that type of thing, we're going to have to strategize in 2018 about how to move forward into 1920. And a lot of that is going to have to do with a public safety levy that we have talked about previously. The public safety levy does allow for supplanting. So basically some of these monies that right now we just have a budget that is not sustainable. You cannot have we're 85, 86% FTE providing services. That leaves only 15% of our budget that is really something that we can change. So when you look at property tax being limited to 1%, and you see sales tax and utility tax, those are so tied to the economy that we might be in a boom right now, but is it enough to keep up with the annual increase of 4 or 5% for a firefighter, a police officer, that type of thing? So we are going to have to look at that public safety levy in order just to maintain the level of service that we're providing now. And I know we've talked about it in the past, and we'll be coming back in February, March and talk about it more. But that is going to be very, very important to the level of service that we provide in 19 and 20.
Thank you.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you for your presentation, and Councilmember Sandberg for your thorough questions. You answered pretty much all of mine. I did have a question on the structure. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it. So let's go storm operations. The 9 FTEs and the 3 maintenance worker aides, that falls under the deputy director. Is that correct? Am I saying that right? The storm operations side?
No, that would fall under the operations manager, the storm operations manager. So
Okay.
for the deputy director position, there's 5 FTEs, and that would be the 3 managers and then the 2 staff from utility billing.
Okay. So if I just take the storm operations and I go to operations manager, then I go 1 maintenance lead, maintenance specialist, senior maintenance workers, 3 maintenance workers, seasonal 2,400 hours. Is that the makeup of the 9 FTEs plus the 3 maintenance worker aides? Am I saying that correct?
Yeah, the makeup of the 9 FTEs are all the folks that are underneath the operations manager. For
Okay.
that division.
And then the 3 maintenance worker aides are in addition?
Correct. Those are seasonal hours. So
Okay.
it comes to roughly 3, 4 to 5 month employees.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I was reading that correctly. So then all of that, all those operations would fall under that manager,
Correct.
correct? Then that manager would fall underneath the deputy director,
Correct.
and the deputy director would fall underneath the director.
That is correct.
So it seems like it's pretty efficient then. And then so is there ever a time when the storm operation, the water operation, the street operation, they're all kind of collaborating and working on projects together?
That happens quite frequently, and particularly in emergent operations where, snow and ice, for example, we simply, in streets, even with 11 FTEs, we cannot handle, a massive snowstorm. It takes everyone, all hands on deck, working together to address those issues.
And that's that part of that collaboration between the director, deputy director, and how the 5, I guess you'd call them managers, are working together. Okay, perfect, thank you.
So I had a couple quick questions. Our total biennial budget, I think I saw it was 220 million. Is that about right?
Yes.
And this budget amendment is how much?
This budget amendment is just the general fund?
Yeah. I think it was 340, right?
The 340 is for the, it's actually for the general fund. It's a large increase because we're adding the $8 million from capital.
But let's put that aside. Just what I'm trying to help the public understand is that because these numbers all sound huge, right? So if you're just a normal human being and you have your income and your mortgage and you're looking at that compared to this, it's staggering. But when you look at it from okay, the whole budget is $220 million.
Right.
It kind of helps kind of put into perspective what we're talking about when we're talking about increases to staffing levels and increases to expenditures and revenues, when it's 340,000 and that type of thing.
340,000, and keeping in mind that the parks grant manager position is not filled.
Right.
And that's a significant amount to that $340,000. So yeah, that's the overall impact of everything we talked tonight about is in the general fund is the $340,000 for the staffing.
And in your professional opinion as the director of finance for the city, on record, you feel that we can afford this, obviously, or else it wouldn't be in front of us?
I do.
Okay.
And I think it's important that we come back quarterly and that we keep the public and the council informed about where we are. Finances change, the economy changes throughout the year, and it gives people comfort to have us come back periodically during the year and relook at those numbers and make sure that we're still on track.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I really appreciate kind of what you've done with this. I know this is a rather large budget amendment, I believe, compared to previous years in the biennium or mid biennium. But it kind of, what I think it shows is there's been a shift in management, and I think we're hearing about things that things have been kind of festering, I guess, that have needed to come forward, and they feel comfortable under the city manager and the leadership of the city to come forward and say, like, these are the things that we think will make this city more efficient. It'll probably generate more revenue. It'll probably be cheaper in the long run. You have to really think about like for the police and fire example, we've been bleeding overtime money, and it's not unusual. Every city does that because you have to staff those positions. But to take a different approach, or at least give what I heard tonight, I think it was the important part, is that we're giving the chiefs the tool to explore those options to figure out which one's cheaper. Before it was like, no, you just keep it to the bare minimum. Don't hire many more people than you need, and we'll just we'll wing it, and hopefully we'll stay within your overtime budget. I have heard personally from firefighters in this organization, other organizations, it's real fun and games to get time and a half and stuff, but you start getting tired and then you get hurt. And so I really think it's important that we do give the police and the fire chief the tools they need to make sure those people are safe, they're well rested, they don't feel obligated for their fellow police officers that were here tonight. If you thought about it, if somebody doesn't come in, then they're down a person. What if something happened and you were just at home and you could have came in, so you would live with that. And I think it's a good gesture. I'm glad that we can afford it, according to our finance director, because this is a very complicated budget, and I appreciate you guys putting this together, and hopefully this will just continue our council goals to make sure we have an efficient and safe workforce. So.
I would like to add that we have a city manager who is allowing us to be innovative. It's not like these ideas have not come to us in the past, but we're able to explore those. And I think that's really awesome. And I think that we're all professional enough to know that when you make changes like this, that you have to monitor it every pay period, and you have to look at it and determine whether or not it's going to come to fruition the way that you believed it would.
Yep. Everybody's had a chance to talk. Is there a motion, Deputy Mayor?
I'd like to move to adopt the proposed ordinance amending the city's 2017-2018 biennial budget.
I'll second it. So it's moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Mayor to adopt the proposed ordinance amending the city's 2017-18 biennial budget. Is there any discussion on the motion, Deputy Mayor?
I just want to echo the mayor's comments. I had taken notes to thank everyone in the organization for being creative and looking for opportunities for efficiency. I think that's really important. And then as I was sitting here thinking about some of the stories about overtime, all I could think was, what are we asking our fire and police to do if they have to do overtime for months at a time? It's unfathomable, because that's not the kind of work that's easy to do to begin with. And so I think it's really important that we try this and plan for the future. So thank you very much for all your efforts.
Any further discussion on the motion? Councilmember Sandberg?
I'll be supporting the motion. And I ask these questions that I do, not to make any judgment. I think it is important to take a new approach towards overtime. So I appreciate this approach. My intent was just to clarify that that approach will be assessed and analyzed over time. And to speak to the comment about this being a drop in our overall budget, our total operating budget can seem really large, because the total budget number incorporates capital costs, debt and interest, a lot of things. So that number, when you just talk about our actual operating costs, is much smaller than $220 million. So when we're talking about a $660,000 increase, I know it's offset by anticipated revenues from next year. It's still significant, and I think it's still important to. I think it's important to taxpayers that we recognize that every increase is an important increase to them. I'm not going to make an amending motion because I think it would fail. I don't support the Human Resources Safety Manager position at the manager position. I think it's an important role that needs to be filled in the city. I don't think it needs to be filled by a manager. I would think that our current safety committee's recommendations have been heeded by the entire employee group, and having a manager title, I don't think necessarily confers any more authority to the good group of employees with the city. And so I think that would have been one opportunity to save some money, to have that position staffed at a lower level. But overall, I think that we've made some good organizational changes, and I appreciate staff and our city manager constantly looking for ways to improve the organization.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, go ahead, place your vote. Passes unanimously with Councilmember Agnew and Spivey absent and excused. Last item on our agenda. You guys okay to hang in there, or do you want to break? Just hang in there. Okay. Oh, wait. You say you want to break? No. Okay, good. AB 17-202, public hearing regarding the 2017 Puget Sound Regional Council Comprehensive Plan Amendments and adoption of an ordinance regarding all 2017 plan amendments. I'm going to officially open the public hearing, and we have a staff presentation by Mr. Blackburn. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. This is a public hearing regarding some comp plan amendments to some comments we received in the Puget Sound Regional Council regarding our 2015 periodic plan update. And the purpose of this public hearing is to adopt an ordinance amending the Imagine Bothell Comprehensive Plan to address those comments we received from Puget Sound Regional Council. And these are based upon the 2015 periodic update the city adopted through Ordinance 2117 in 2015. That actually happened in July of 2015. And consistent with probably standard practice, after that update, the city staff sent the comp plan to PSRC for what's called a consistency review. And that's basically where Puget Sound Regional Council determines whether your plan is consistent with the Growth Management Act as well as the Vision 2040 multi-county planning policies. Basically, it's a review they do. Now, upon completing the review in 2015, PSRC did certify our 2015 update as being compliant with both the Growth Management Act and those multi-county planning policies. However, they did identify a number of suggested amendments that would clarify some certain sections within the land use element, as well as make a little bit of changes within some of the transportation provisions, and finally on some healthy housing, healthy promotion of our human services goals. Now, one of the things that we get asked a lot is, well, who is Puget Sound Regional Council, or PSRC? And they're basically a regional planning agency that they have certain responsibilities under both federal and state law. There are 80 member jurisdictions, including the city of Bothell, from the counties of King, Snohomish, Kitsap, and Pierce. And basically what this is a regional forum where decisions are made about transportation, growth management, and economic development. Now, one of the things that PSRC is really responsible for is coordinating the city region's overall growth plan, and that is again called the Vision 2040 plan. And essentially what that does is that has a bunch of policies that are applied to all 4 counties, of which part that the counties then implement those provisions within their own processes and finally gets passed down to the city of Bothell. Now, one of the key features of the Puget Sound Regional, they are responsible for distributing certain federal transportation dollars, including the federal highway transportation dollars, and that's about $80 million. The Federal Transit Administration, which is about $170 million. Those funds are distributed throughout the region on a competitive process. In fact, the city of Bothell does submit for competitive processes to PSRC for improvements that are happening within the city, including the Bothell Boulevard. The multi-county planning policies are kind of one of these wonkish things that planners get excited about. Everybody else that says, yeah, okay, I really don't want to hear about that. But it talks about growth targets. It talks about what your general plan should look at. And essentially it says, look, you're going to assign some land use designations to meet your growth targets. Now, this is a chart that kind of shows some of our growth targets right now as they are adopted in the 2015 plan. And this is one of the areas where the PSRC said we should do some improvements. And I'm just going to kind of go right through that quickly. Oh, one thing that I do have to correct is that in the ordinance, we had a incorrect number populated, and that's on page 335 of 374. There was a number that was basically identified. It's not supposed to be 41,000, it's supposed to be 55,000. But, you know, that's something that we can kind of get into a little bit more in detail. Here is, of course, the ordinance. I've basically provided the example of the language that's in the ordinance that would be adopted tonight. And it basically just has some clarifications within land use, some provisions that have been added to the housing and human services element, which is basically some things regarding you know, how we were going to do housing affordability, as well as, of course, some safe housing provisions, as well as healthy housing provisions. There's some new policies that have been proposed there. Finally, there's a new policy, new action, within the transportation element that identifies that the city should look at a multimodal concurrency application. And basically what multimodal means is that you're going to look at different ways for people to go back and forth, not just via single occupant vehicles, but also through walking and transit and bicycles. And there's actually some new information out there and new techniques that allows you to kind of count how long it takes. An example is, okay, you take the pedestrian type of a situation and you say, okay, from this point to this point, there's going to be a certain concurrency. Let's say it's 30 minutes. You do an analysis, and within that 30 minutes from that point to point, you say, oh, wait a minute, there's a water course in the way. You have to come up with some way to address that connection. So that's basically what that would do. That would be something that we would do in a later on type of a code amendment before the council eventually. So I think tonight the concept is, of course, to take some public comment, have some council deliberations, motion to close the public hearing, motion to approve the recommended action, and then, of course, vote on that recommended action. Of course, the recommended action is adopt the proposed ordinance within your packet that's in attachment 2, as amended, basically as I have outlined tonight, or as the council may amend from that. And that concludes my presentation, so thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. 1 second. Is this about this public hearing or a prior public hearing? Oh, is it general public comment? Huh. All right, we'll deal with this in just a second. So, Mr. Blackburn, there's been one change that the city manager let me know about, that there was some staff, there was a staff situation. Oh, you would like to speak for yourself. That's a great idea. Go ahead.
So the city has an opportunity once a year to do the comp plan amendments. And so with only 5 members of the council here this evening, my ask would be that if you need additional clarifications or there are things in this item that you're not comfortable with or feel that we haven't properly provided you with adequate information, that rather than having this ordinance not passed tonight and not being able to do another comp plan amendment until the fall of 2018, that you provide us the opportunity to come back to you on December 12th with any additional information that you might need and continue the public hearing to that date certain of December 12th. If adequate information is here and you're comfortable making that decision tonight, please do. But if you do need additional information, that we would ask that you continue the public hearing until the 12th.
Better than I would have said it. Is there anybody in the public that would like to provide public comment, though, on the code amendments? Seeing nobody. Okay. Let's go for staff. Councilmember Freed.
In response to city manager's comments, I don't see any reason why I couldn't vote in the affirmative tonight for the recommended action. I don't need any more information.
Okay. Is there any questions for staff? Deputy Mayor?
I would like to know a little bit more about the multimodal transportation concurrency program. What does it entail, and is it something that we need to add to the ever-growing list for docketing?
Well, a little of both, actually. Basically, what multimodal means is that throughout the region, we're trying to come up with different ways to get people transported. And, not just single occupant vehicles or maybe just exclusively transit or any of those kind of things. There's also other methods. That's walking. We're doing a fantastic compact walkable neighborhood downtown. We also have bicycle trails and all those kind of things. That's basically what the objective is to come up with multiple ways for people to get from place to place. And what would occur with this is the action that Puget Sound Regional Council recommends we do is that we put that as an action that we will look at that type of an approach in future comp plan amendments and code amendments. Now, I will say that staff thinks that a lot of that is already in the plan. It's already got policies regarding transportation. It's got policies regarding pedestrian and bikes. All those things are already in the plan. So it's not really a huge change from our standpoint. It's just identifying that we're going to take a little closer look at the concurrency aspect of it.
Okay. And then on page 358 of the packet, hold on, my computer fell asleep. In regards to, sorry, it's not going, hold on. Let's see. Sorry, my computer's not functioning. Okay, under item number 6, I believe. I'm wondering if, when they talk about reiterating for the desire for the city to identify transportation funding shortfalls of planned projects, in other words, PSRC believes it's acceptable to identify projects which may not have complete funding with the comprehensive plan. So currently, when we talk about a list of projects, is that not our capital facilities plan, or is this a separate, different list?
Well, it's a little of both, and here's where it gets kind of confusing, is because our comp plan, we do have actually a list of projects, and it's based upon the CIP, and the CIP is based upon the list of projects in the comprehensive plan. What PSRC wanted us to acknowledge here was that you don't always have all the money to pay for that list of projects. And what they did is that they actually provided some suggested language, and that's on page 339 of the ordinance, 339 of 374. Basically, the idea is that, and this was the discussion that PSRC said, yeah, that's the kind of thing that we are seeing other jurisdictions implement their comprehensive plan. That says, look, we may not be able to provide for every single one of these projects. If that's the case, we have some options, and these are some of the options we would have to explore. And that's basically the gist of what the PSRC was trying to get to.
And are you talking about the funding analysis?
Funding analysis, yeah, the funding discussion was
So
primarily what
perfect
did go.
segue to my next question.
There you go.
So anytime I see, I don't know, suggestions or opportunities for raising more money, that makes me nervous. So this is now going to be in our comp plan, and is that saying that we're going to do these things?
Oh, no. In fact, one of the things about the comp plan that gives us a lot of flexibility is the fact that it's got a lot of policies and it's got a lot of ideas within that comprehensive plan. Sometimes it's even aspirational. There are certainly times when we don't or we aren't able to meet all the things in our comp plan, but we should strive to get there. And that's why one of the things that we're trying to do here is that, okay, these are all the projects and the work we want to do in our transportation system. We should strive to achieve that. We may have funding issues, and if we do have funding issues, it'd be a situation where we would look at the community and we say, okay, well, there's a really important project out here that we want to get implemented. Let's talk about options to fix that. And that's basically what this is trying to achieve.
Okay, so we're not agreeing to do them. They just wanted a list of how we might achieve that.
Right,
Okay.
yes.
Because I saw that list and I broke into a cold sweat.
Yes, and that was a difficult list to put together, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, given that we just passed the Safe Streets and Sidewalks levy.
That was it.
I think people's appetites are diminished. Okay, I guess that's all of my questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Sandberg?
I'm sorry if you already addressed this, but why are we addressing a PSRC letter in 2015 now?
Well, two reasons. One is that we got the PSRC letter after the 2015 update, and that was basically in October. Our 2016 and 2017, well, actually our 2016 docket was already full when we actually received that letter. So the soonest we could do this, a plan amendment to implement the PSRC comments was 2017.
And that hasn't impacted their view of our request to stay as a regional growth center in RGC.
It probably does not directly impact that. However, it's always a good thing to be working with your primary planning body within the region to say, look, yeah, we heard what you're identifying. We think that here's where we can implement our plan to make it more consistent with the Vision 2040, the overall plan.
And then we were below target for population in Snohomish County, but I thought we addressed all that with the RAC zone increases. So.
Yes, and see, here's what's interesting about this is that when PSRC reviewed the plan, in fact, when we had our discussion with some of the staff, they said, look, we had a little problem finding where you're actually identifying exactly what the numbers were and exactly what, and that's basically what this plan amendment does. It says, okay, in a couple of really clear tables, at least we think they're clear, here is what our target was, here was what our capacity was, and here is where we are surplus or deficit. And you're absolutely right. In 2014, before we did the periodic update, we had a deficit in the Snohomish County portion of the city of about 3,500 people. That's people, not residents. I'm sorry, not units. And the concept there was that we had to meet that capacity shortfall within the Snohomish County part of the city. The city in the past has made a couple attempts and gone to the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board to say, look, we are a city in 2 counties. We have a surplus in Keene County. Why can't we take that and use that to meet our overall growth target? And so far, the city has not been able to convince PSRC that that's an approach that we should be able to take. So they continue to require the city to meet its growth targets both in and independently within each of the counties that the city of Bothell covers.
And so now you think they'll be convinced that we're meeting our population target in Snohomish County?
Well, we do now. In fact, that was what the 2015 plan amendment did, is it did implement that growth target, and we do have that capacity surplus now, as a matter of fact.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember McNeil?
Thank you. Can you, I'm on page 335 of the packet, and it has existing, 2014 existing population, and I think you had that struck on yours to 55,669?
Actually, it's on page, oh, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time finding it. Hold on here just a second.
I have it
It
on
would be on page
335.
335. Yes, there you go.
Okay, so the number that we have in the packet is 41,630. That was struck by you as 55,669?
Right.
Okay, so that's existing population?
No, that's existing, oh, I'm sorry. That was the previous 2014 comprehensive plan population capacity. That was basically how many capacity we could accommodate within, underneath the 2014, before the 2015 amendment.
That was our target.
That was our target, yeah. Well, our capacity. Our target was 55,065, so approximately 600 people different.
Okay. And then the established 2035 is now going to be 2040, or is it still staying 2035?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, what happened is that we had to increase our capacity to 2035. That's basically what the new PSRC requirement was, so that we actually measured our capacity based upon the year 2035. That's what our capacity is in that year.
Okay, and that's both King and Snohomish
That's correct.
counties. Okay. And you had mentioned that we're meeting our growth targets at this point
In both those counties, yes.
in both counties. And are we exceeding our growth target?
Yes, yeah, we have a surplus in both counties.
And when you say, what is it, how much of a surplus do we have?
The surplus in Snohomish County is approximately 2,000 people, and in King County it's about 4,000 people.
So it's people, not houses.
People, not houses, that's correct, yes. You can derive the houses or the units by dividing by a certain persons per household. And depending upon which style of housing, multifamily is 1.89, single family is 2.95 or something like that. So basically 2 to 3.
2 or 3, okay.
Yes.
And then the Canyon Park area, it lists first, second, our packet lists the first set 2035, second set 2035. Can you explain that? It's I've got it as page 337. Population, employment capacity.
Yes, and one of the things that you're looking at the population capacity, and you're also looking at the employment capacity. What happens is you have to measure both of those capacities. Now, in the city of Bothell, we have the luxury of being way over as far as employment, because we have some wonderful employment centers. But when you do the analysis, you actually have to show both, and that's what this did, basically.
Okay, and how are we doing on our employment?
We are we're in wonderful shape. We have 28,000 employees within the city of Bothell. And I think our target is like 15 or 16, something like that. So we are in wonderful shape.
And is primarily that in the north end?
No, I don't want to say it's in the north end. We have some pretty substantial business parks within both halves, if you will, of the city. But probably a little bit more in the north end. But it's probably pretty close to like 52, 48 or something like that.
Okay, and then I think the Regional Growth Center was brought up earlier.
Yes.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, essentially what it is the Regional Growth Center is an area that Puget Sound Regional Council has identified throughout the years. In fact, the city first identified the Canyon Park area. In fact, I actually have a photograph of that. Went too fast, my apologies. Is an area that is designated for particularly strong growth. Essentially, the idea is, okay, this is an area that's close to freeways or close to transportation, close to transit options. This is where you really should be concentrating a lot of your growth in the city of Bothell. And this area was selected because it has those two features, as well as has a very strong employment population as well. So it's a really logical place to have a regional growth center.
Okay, so it's important to maybe connect the north, the south, the regional centers, when you talk about transportation?
Well, as a matter of fact, yes, transportation is a key. And one of the things that we're doing right now is we're just starting the visioning process for the Regional Growth Center. We're kind of have a stakeholder group. And one of the things that we have been finding very interesting is the number of efforts that WashDOT, Sound Transit, Community Transit, even Metro to a certain degree are making to make these connections work better, transit-wise.
Transit, okay. Well, the reason I was asking those questions, Bruce, is we hear a lot in the community about how fast our region's growing. And it's important for folks in our community to understand where our growth's at, what it looks like, where it's going, and, not just the present, but the future. So I appreciate your presentation and the information. I look forward to the future stuff. Thank you.
All right, I think everybody's had a chance to talk that wanted to. I just wanted to add, I appreciate you guys getting this on the docket. The PSRC plan amendments were, I'm pretty sure I had that conversation with the executive of PSRC because we were concerned about losing our regional growth center designation. He said, well, I'm kind of concerned about you guys not responding to our letter. So thank you, staff, for getting that ready to go for this year. Have they had a chance to review them and think everything's just great, or? Yeah.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we worked pretty closely with Michael Hubner, who is our PSRC contact on this item. They have an interesting approach that's pretty unique, is that they say, yes, we like this direction, but they don't say, yeah, this is exactly the language we want to see, because they want the council to have the opportunity to make some changes if you so desire. But yeah, they are on board with these.
We addressed their comments, I guess.
Yes, indeed.
Okay,
we did, yes.
good. Okay, that was all the questions I had. Is there a motion?
I move the recommended action.
It's moved by the deputy mayor, seconded by Councilmember McNeil to, you guys like to just say move the recommended action, but I got to read it. Adopt the proposed ordinance provided as attachment 2, which approves the 2017 plan amendments regarding number one, the plan amendment to respond to comments from PSRC staff during its review of the city's 2015 periodic update to the Imagine Bothell Comprehensive Plan. And 2, the plan amendments for the University of Washington Bothell Cascadia College Campus Master Plan. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Sandberg?
Yeah, I'll be supporting the motion, but I did want to point out to our future councils, for a long part of our history, the city has always had excess capacity and employment in both Snohomish and King County, and we've always thought that's a great thing, because that is a good thing. You want to be an employment center, but we've lagged in our population capacity in Snohomish County. Then we addressed that in the 2015 or 16, 2015 plan and code amendments. But now we have a surplus in our capacity. And again, I want to emphasize capacity, not that we have actual homes or housing units in excess of what the PSRC has deemed us to have. We have excess capacity. And one can view that as a good thing as well, but previously when we were working at a deficit, there was always a pressure to upzone properties. And so I think going forward in the future, councils and planning commissions should continue to look at that capacity, and now that we have a surplus, not hopefully, or however the choice may be, not feel pressured to upzone because we're trying to meet a population target, because we've succeeded and then some with this amendment. So with that said, I will be supporting the motion.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, go ahead, place your vote. Passes unanimously without Councilmember Spivey absent and excused. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to leave?
So second.
It's moved by everybody. Okay, Councilmember McNeil moves it, second by Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, place your vote. We are adjourned.